Welcome to Telluride and the Telluride. I'm so honored to have you as our first ESP parent to interview, and now you actually have multiple roles with ESP, which we're going to talk about. But before we get started with all of the fun and interesting questions, I just have to ask, what's your go-to song?
I'm more than a bird, I'm more than a plane, more than some pretty face beside a train. It's not easy to be me.
So let's talk a little bit about Kyla and about how you got to ESP, because I'll say when I first met you, you did kind of look like you had it all together. and you were always, will be, are such a tremendous mom, and that is one of the things that I love most about you. And when I met you with Kyla, it was hard for you to let ESP take control, and in fact you were Kyla's best caretaker. So what made you come to ESP? How did you get involved with ESP? How did that work for you?
Well, Kyla always loved to dress up, and she loved to get dolled up. And so our first event with ESP was Big Hearts, and it was back when it was at the Oconee County, the North Oconee gym.
High school
auditorium.
That's right.
And so we did that, and I was terrified, and I sent her back in the back, and I could not think about anything. I really don't even remember the event, because all I could think of was I had just given my daughter to a teenager, and that scared me to death. And so that was the one thing. And then that summer we did 1 week.
Okay.
And I sent her with her nurse, and I sat in the parking lot that entire week, sweating to death.
I didn't know that, Cathy.
Yes, I did.
This is news to me. How many years later?
It was, that was what, well,
like
it was,
10 years ago.
Yes, 11 years ago.
11 years ago. And you sat in the parking lot the entire time.
Yes, and the entire time. I didn't leave for lunch. I sat there, and I just waited to make sure that everything was fine. And it was fine, and everything was fine.
But what couldn't be fine? I mean, talk about Kyla. Like, what's different? What was different from Kyla than a typical kid at that stage?
Well, she was 10 years old, and she had seizures, and she had to be suctioned, and if she had a seizure that required her going to the hospital, then I wanted to be close by so that in case something happened. And she had, things where she didn't swallow correctly, and so, if her suction broke down, I was terrified of her being, like if we would need to immediately go home, and things that you don't think about when, you have an average 10-year-old that you send off to camp. And over the course of time, I did let her have more opportunities of being away from me, being away from nursing, and just being around peers. And so I got to meet a whole other level of Kyla. I finally got to the point where she got to go to overnight camp. That day when I went to pick her up, she cried and cried and cried because she didn't want me to come, because she had had so much fun. We told her, this is closing ceremonies. This is closing ceremonies. And I feel like that will forever be something that is so strong in my heart, in that she cried going home, and she cried getting her shower and getting to bed, and because she knew what closing ceremonies was. And she was already excited about the next year, and we went on the cruise, and we're all having this amazing time on the cruise, and Kaylin says, we're going to have closing ceremonies now. And everybody else is laughing, and my daughter is just boo-hooing because now she knows that closing ceremonies means that the fun with ESP has to end for the moment. And so, you know, that's has a lot to do with why I feel so strongly about, you know, continuing our journey with ESP, because I feel like every single child out there with special needs needs to know what closing ceremonies means.
So let's talk about Ben. Ben is how old now?
14.
14, and he's been volunteering with us for
This was his 3rd year.
3 years. Okay.
Yes.
So what does ESP mean to Ben?
It means everything. As a matter of fact, someone was talking to him this week and said, "What do you want to do with your life?" And it really struck me that he said, "There's a lot of things that interest me, but the only thing I love is ESP. I see myself growing old with ESP." He has a desire in his heart to create a world for kids who have no voice, to give them that voice.
So let's talk about the last few months and what has changed and why you're now on staff at ESP. So Kyla spent her last summer with us this past summer.
Yes.
And we didn't know it was going to be her last summer, but
No.
she had a really great
Yes.
few weeks. How many weeks did she come?
She was able to come 1 week.
1 week. Okay.
And she was, when we unfortunately lost her, she was coming the very next day to ESP.
That's
was
right.
very
Signed
excited about coming, and we it was a big surprise that we lost her. And I always say I was only supposed to have her for 3 years, is what I was told. I had her for 20, and I wish I had had her for 20 more.
Yeah.
And so it's been a very big change for our family. But I knew that I would only make her happy to know that I continued my work with special needs children. And when the opportunity came up to become the coordinator of special events, knowing how much Big Hearts and all of those events meant to her, I knew that it was where I was supposed to be.
Last question for you, Cathy.
Yes.
What makes you happy? What makes you joyful?
I enjoy seeing other people smile. I think that of all the things that I could say is when I have the opportunity to make somebody else smile. That is probably one of the biggest things that I enjoy in life.
You do that for me a lot. I hope that you know that we find joy in you as well. And I'm so thankful that 11 years ago you took a chance on us at Big Hearts with Kyla, and that you've taken a chance on us again with Big Hearts. And thank you for being willing to share your heart today. And we've just so enjoyed the nice ride that we had here. At one point,
Yes.
my Telluride said, "Stop and take a break." And there was a picture of a coffee cup right there. I was like, yep, it's about the coffee time.
It's about that
Thank
time.
you, Car, for reminding me. But just what a joy it was
Yes.
to spend time with you. So thank you for your time today.
I enjoyed this. Thank you very much.